All right, so today is, I guess, because of the first episode of the Nick Talks show, the podcast, whatever. I have been starting to upload YouTube videos on this channel, and I podcasted a long time ago on our Associates podcast, which we may or may not bring back. The jury's still out on that one. But I have multiple friends, and I want to have them on for a conversation and do many, many episodes myself, just because logistically it works out that way. And today, I have my friend Paul on. He's a medical researcher. He is I don't want to speak for him, but he's a medical researcher, and he's very advanced and out there, and he has a lot of cool information. And him and I are on the same wavelength on a lot of things, from a spiritual standpoint and a cultural standpoint, and even a business standpoint, and just how the world works right now, and a lot of the things that we're seeing change in the medical field. And he's very advanced and very deep in that regard for the past decade. So I want to have him on because I think we're going to have a great, interesting conversation. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Paul, and I want you to tell us a little about yourself.
First off, I'm happy to finally do this. We've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah.
We're both too busy and a lot of
That's right.
stuff going on, so I'm happy to do this. So I've been doing medical research essentially since I was 18 years old. I'm 35 now, so it's quite some time. Along the way, early on, and I could dive into different stories about how I came to the positions and the paradigms that I did, but essentially when I was about 19, I figured out that the paradigm that we use in medicine is it's horseshit. It's decades behind, and that there was a lot of technology that was being suppressed over the years to deal with infectious disease. And so I kind of took those elements, found some of the missing pieces, and figured out how to actually apply a lot of these technologies that weren't being used, weren't on the market, to get people better. And I say, how do I use it for an allergy? How do I use it for an infection? How do I use it for an orthopedic issue somebody has? And so that led me here to today. I have a machine in the patent phase now, and a lot of different things that we can touch upon. So whatever you want to talk about, I want to talk about. I do also want to pull a little disclaimer. I'm not a medical doctor, and anything that I'm saying now is not medical advice. Everything you take from this, entertainment purposes, whatever it is, you deal with on your own. I'm not responsible for anything you do, and I hold the right to change any opinion that I say today. So
That's a very broad-reaching disclaimer there.
Well, I've had to be careful.
Tell me about that.
Okay, so this can go into a big area.
Let's keep it brief because I have a big question I want to ask.
Okay, so there's a lot of people that would like me to not do what I'm doing right now. And that's not just people who are in pharma or even conventional medicine, prescribing medication. It's also people in the alternative or natural health space, because a lot of the stuff I say conflicts with that, and I can, generally speaking, tell people how to get better without changing their lifestyle permanently, as crazy as that sounds. So there's a lot of money in the supplement space that people will lose if my information continuously gets out the way it is.
Well, it's definitely going to get out.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
I mean, let's start with the real question I want to tackle, because this is something that I have dove into in the past 2 years, maybe even longer. You know, when I first kind of got into the world's a scam type of thing, I found, it's the Federal Reserve, it's the the fractional reserve banking,
Bankers.
That whole thing. And I was probably 16, maybe 15 years old when I started to question it. And I thought the whole economy was going to collapse. I'm like 16, I'm getting ready to go out in the woods and whatever. And then I get into business, and I'm like, well, I got to make some money for myself. But I didn't get into the health side of things. I then saw my sister start to have some like autoimmune type of stuff going on, and I didn't really think much of it. I was like, that's crazy. Like, I don't really understand it, all of that. And then I personally, maybe 2 or 3 years, 4 years after that, developed like severe acne, which I had never had before. And I ended up sort of solving that on my own. But the more I got into it, and then, my girlfriend had some issues, and then you look around and you're like, all these people are kind of silent about what's going on and how they feel, but pretty much everybody has something going on, whether it's their stomach, whether it's their heart, whatever it is. And then you look and everyone's, dropping dead, and the whole, shot that everybody was given Well, I wasn't given,
Myself,
you know, in 2021 and all that. And, you know, things start to snowball. And so I start to really question the medical side of it as well. And you look around, you're like, everything is a scam. Everything is a lie. And as a medical researcher, and you and I have had a lot of these conversations, you know, smoking cigars, just kind of ranting about whatever's going on.
Sure.
I'm curious, in your opinion, to know what is going on. What is causing all these issues that all these people are having? And we can get into our specific story. You can get into your specific story, all the people that you treat and you work with and like speak with about this. But I'm curious just to know, like, what should the world know about what's happening right now and why everybody is so sick?
It's $1 million question. There could be hours of an answer. To say it's just an environmental toxin is an oversimplification. Everything comes down to electrons being stolen. If your electrons are being stolen in your body can't make new cells, pathways get jammed up, and people end up with symptoms. Okay? Autoimmunity is a big one. You mentioned that with your sister. So, and a lot of, more commonly women, but a lot of men now too. Infections are the direct cause to most of these conditions. And then the question there is, well, we've had bacteria and viruses and parasites and fungus, mold. We've had it forever. Why is it affecting us now? And when you look at the different environmental contaminants, the body is busy dealing with trying to get those out. And now the infections are opportunistic, and the body can't handle the infectious load, and people end up with autoimmune disease and all of these random syndromes that they have now. And you mentioned something. You said, you said everybody has a symptom. Everybody seems to have something. I would argue that the people that don't have symptoms are worse off than the people that do. Because everybody has different, let's call it SNPs, SNPs, so single nucleotide polymorphism, different genetic propensities to detoxify certain chemicals or to deal with environmental stressors. Okay? Like you mentioned acne, for example. A lot of people that have acne, everyone assumes it's hormonal, and that is for a lot of people. But a lot of people don't have the SNP, the gene, to make glutathione in, for example, the areas of the hair and the skin, the nails, everything that women complain about, right? And some people do. Some people have that one, but they don't have the one for liver, kidney, and gut. So one person might have a gut issue in response to insert toxin name in the area, plastics, whatever it is, phthalates, and the other person might not have that symptom. They might have the acne because of this. The other person might have a reproductive issue. The other person might have a heart issue or a hormone issue developing over decades, and they didn't have any direct symptoms, so they didn't know what to do with it. And over the course of time, then unfortunately, people end up with things like cancer or chronic neurodegenerative diseases because they didn't have a warning sign. So I would argue that often the people that have the annoying, stubborn things are the ones that can know something's off and do something about it early on.
There's a couple points there.
Let's go.
You know, the first thing is actually figuring out how to fix a lot of this stuff, which you have done. There's a lot of solutions popping up. You know, this whole holistic, right-wing health, you know, you see RFK get in. There's a lot of different things. You see people like, I'm not going to name names. We don't need to give out free publicity. But you guys are probably, you know, if you're in the health space or you're in the business space, you're probably watching this, and you've seen some of these people out there. Everyone claims to have the answer, you know, the supplements and this and that and the protocol and carnivore and then vegan and then do this and then do an elimination diet and yada yada. It seems like there's a lot of answers, and there's some people that are solving their stuff, but a lot of times these things come back. And something that we've talked about a lot is getting to the root of the issue, getting to the upstream thing, because the whatever the upstream thing is causes, you know, 5 different things, and then it allows the infections, and then it allows the COVID, and allows the Wi-Fi to affect you, and all of that. And so what are people that are in the health space, and maybe people that have these autoimmune issues, what are they doing right now that's wrong? Because we talk about the environmental toxins, maybe heavy metals, and the infections are a big problem. But what are they doing? that's wrong, because a lot of these people are doing this stuff and then they go off it,
And then
the problems come back.
Yeah.
They can't eat a slice of chocolate cake. Obviously a lot of the cake is filled with bullshit.
Yeah.
Fine, but they can't even have a little taste of gluten because the problem comes back.
Yeah.
And so what is the reason for this stuff to keep coming back? Why is nothing working?
There was a point in time when I was doing research early on in college where I knew that this tech would work, but because I had not found a lot of people who had directly healed of these chronic things, they would go on these diets and they'd feel better for a short period of time, and I could talk about this. I started writing a book called Healing is a Myth because I was that skewed with how shitty people's results were at actually curing or reversing the condition. Whether it's, and the carnivore diet has awesome things, the paleo diet, all these things have a place. There's no question that a lot of these things are better lifestyle practices. But if you go, the chocolate cake was a good example, or you go to have a glass of milk and you have the same response after you avoided it for 30 days and your gut feels fine, these practices are not healing the conditions. They're managing the conditions. It's like taking a pharmaceutical pill, but with a lot more inconvenience, right? I don't have to tell you because, we've all tried really strict lifestyle things like, oh, I got to go to this place and has seed oil on this. Oh, I got this. People are getting sick sometimes psychologically because of all of the neuroticism that goes into all these finicky lifestyle practices, even though they're more beneficial, but they're still managing the condition. So it's like they're choosing to, and it's a better choice overall, but they're choosing instead of the pharmaceutical thing or even the supplement to institute a lifestyle practice, and nobody's fully getting better. So a lot of it is, and this is what really frustrated me and why I kept pushing this path in the research and the testing and working clinically and figuring out, how do you go back, is I didn't want to manage the thing. I wanted to go back to what I was doing without these effects. The main thing there is, it's about your pathways. So when the body's under stress, and this is well documented, whether it's a kid who develops a peanut allergy or an egg allergy, or somebody has a traumatic event and then they have a back issue start. It's well established that traumatic events or the body shifts into a place where these conditions now are there and they never go back, okay? And that's what I wanted to spend a lot of time on. So people are doing these lifestyles to lower the inflammation, but the second they have the food or whatever it is, the issues come back, the pathway's still there. The reason that it didn't go back into place is the body didn't have an energetic surplus in that local area of which that pathway originates. So let's say someone had an antibiotic and now they're allergic to gluten and dairy. And they avoid it and they feel good, but then they go to somebody's party or they, somebody, in a case like celiac, somebody cuts a piece of bread and they use the same knife and now they have an immune reaction, right? They healed the inflammation, but the body didn't get enough of an energetic surplus in the gut specifically to repair that tissue, repair the pathway, and repair the receptors so that now that person can go back and eat the thing that they want. That's it. It's not rocket science. But everyone's overcomplicating it. So before I keep going, I can tell you when I ask something else.
Yeah, no, so something that I've correlated, speaking with you as a medical researcher, speaking with other people that are maybe in the holistic space, other healers, maybe people that have been around for a while, maybe people that are newer to it, reading some of like Ray Peat's stuff, for example, which was so funny because I'm on Twitter, quite big, and there's a lot of people in the health space on there, and they're talking about it. And I met you. You're like, yeah, Ray Peat, I knew about him 10 years ago, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, there's a ton of people on Twitter. You're like, what are you talking about?
People thought I was nuts.
What is that?
People thought I was nuts with the Ray Peat stuff.
But now it's like a movement. And so regardless, whoever I talk to that is really tapped in, it all comes back to energy.
Yep.
It all comes back to energy production.
Yep.
And it's one of the reasons I eat the way that I eat, not to avoid seed oils, but it does feel different to eat them. Sure. I do feel different. Not that my body can't handle them. It's just like I think it takes energy away from what I'm trying to do. And so I eat in a specific way for the goals that I have, business, health goals, workout goals, etc. I notice that I genuinely feel different if I eat incorrectly.
Of course.
And I don't think a lot of people are really paying attention to that, at least in my space, where, I'm just lazy, I'm slow, I'm a little sluggish, it's tough for me to do the work. I gotta go type so long on the computer. It's like, dude, you ate McDonald's for every single meal yesterday, and you don't work out, and you don't move, and you don't do any of this stuff. And so, of course, you're not going to have any energy, obviously. And that's from like a lifestyle standpoint. But you're also saying that from an energetic standpoint, that's how people heal. And so if, for example, they get damaged by the antibiotics, maybe they have some heavy metals, maybe they got in contact with they probably
Everybody does, yeah.
They got in contact with an environmental toxin, and now they're eating glyphosate in the food, and we can talk about that in a little bit because I have some questions on that.
Sure.
So they're just like beaten down, but they fix it with the diet. They fix it with carnivore or whatever. But it goes back because they don't have the energy in that pathway of the body to fix it. So what is going to give them that energy? Can it be done through food, kind of like I'm talking about, which is more lifestyle based? Or does it need to have something a little bit extra? And I know you have machines and you have tools and you have patents around some of these things, but I'm curious, how does one out there, some stranger listening to this in a random place in America right now, get the energy to fix those pathways?
It's a good question. If they don't have access to me or somebody that has similar technology and a process to getting local to the area to skip the nonsense, charge it up so that the body can heal with the specific issue they want, the lifestyle stuff can help, but they still need an energetic surplus like you're talking about. So one thing they can do is you go get a VIX thermometer because they work really quickly. Eat your food, you check in 20 minutes, 25 minutes, see if your body temperature goes up and stabilizes. If your body temperature drops, you know that you had too much fluid and your potassium-sodium ratio might be off, or the calories in the food that you were eating, it wasn't enough to stimulate an energetic response. The problem is it's still not enough because you're eating food, and digestion itself is a process where it takes energy to break things down, to take that and then use that and convert it into raw materials into your body, right? So there's still energy being taken from your body when eating, which is why people a lot of times get benefits from fasting because their body's not going through the energy of breaking down food, right? It's catabolizing negative tissue in our body and things. So you need to do practices like earthing or grounding, which people thought was voodoo until we have all the studies on this now, where you're actually getting an electron surplus or at least some support. So maybe that's using a grounding mat or putting it on an area where it hurts. It could be coffee sometimes has a benefit if you're not too depleted in the other nutrients that are associated with it or if you're not sensitive to mold. Breathing exercises, a lot of this, red light machines, everything you're talking about with energy production, that's what's going on with all these things. That's what's going on.
That's what I noticed.
Red light machines, right? The sunlight coming back, people trying to get more of that, red light, the proper UV, grounding, people putting their feet in it. What's the other big thing last couple of years? Breath work. What's another big thing Gary Brecker talks about all the time? His morning breath. He won't skip it. He'll skip everything else, but he won't do that. Why? Because you're pumping up and you're getting a surge of electrons. Okay, and what does he say to do? With your feet on the ground too. He's not off. If you break down any of these things in the paleo world, the carnivore world, some of the vegan, all the places, all the forums, all the Reddit, everything that people are pushing to now involves an increase of electrons and an increase of energy. And they can work, but they often take a very long time. But it's a better route than what people are going with now than just starving themselves or just taking supplements.
And a lot of your solutions, I'll be careful with my words because I don't want to, and you can fill in the details, but a lot of your solutions involve directly putting energy into the points where those toxins exist to eliminate them.
Correct.
Would you expand on that in any way?
Yeah, so one machine uses something called scalar energy, which is also something that's popping out right now and is also primarily used often with red light. So even though it's not a direct red light like you think of, I'm standing in front of like a red light machine, it's a whole other level. So
would you call it like a more powerful version of it?
It's thousands of times more effective and powerful because it's pinpointed and it's giving your body information that even from a physics perspective, we haven't really ironed out all the details except for the fact that we know that it seems to give the body information of how to do work. Like the energy is how things do work. Remember that from high school bio and stuff. But it's giving it the information so it can take energy and it knows what to do. It's like correcting deficiencies without sitting there and thinking about, is it a vitamin A deficiency? Do I have an E deficiency? Do I have a boron deficiency? Right? It just gives your body the information that the raw materials have so the body can make the right decisions on a cellular level. You want to jump in? Go ahead.
No, keep going. Keep going.
It's a big expansive question, but that's one thing. And then the other thing is literally the direct current machine. Okay. Which you've seen me, you've experienced, you've seen people, me use it. I skipped the nonsense. It took a while to come up with a process, but it's basically finding out the weakest origin in the body. One of the ways that I do it is my machine has an ohm meter built into it. So an ohm meter. So basically it's like a stud finder for the human body. So I can take a measurement and I can see, this system, when I put this over your stomach, it's minus this many volts. Or it's negative, or it's high, or it's too much. So I can find the places that are the most depleted. And when we literally put that direct current in,
I saw it.
Yeah.
Well, something that you talk about is the body steals energy from the stomach to protect the other really important organs. And you took the meter and you put it. I saw it live, not my stomach, but someone else's stomach, and it had no energy over it. You then took that and you put it over their heart, and it was full, and they were having stomach problems, leaky gut, things like that, etc. And it just proves it's all energy based. I saw it with my own eyes, like live.
100%.
And I'm curious. Okay, so I want to switch gears to one other question that is. I feel like a lot of people talk about glyphosate and pesticides and the seed oils. The seed oils is a huge one. And I agree it's a problem and it's not good for you.
Sure.
And you shouldn't be eating it.
No question about it.
And it's not good fuel for your body. Obviously, I think that's clear, and anyone that's kind of tapped into the space knows that. But people eliminate these again and they still have problems. Yep. We have heavy metals, like you said, everybody has. And there's environmental toxins. And there's infections. There's probably all sorts of other things. Now, I know we get into some tricky territory when we start to point out who is actually behind some of these things.
We can talk about some of that.
But I want to know, like, what are these root things that everybody has, likely in America?
You mean the toxins, the causal?
Yeah, what are these toxins? And obviously, we've talked about how it's possible to eliminate them. And I'd like to talk about what are the like heavy metals. You can chelate them, or something like your process can be used. Or what are some of the other processes? And so let's first talk about what are these major things that are
some top ones.
Yeah, major things affecting everybody. I know there's mold, there's environmental toxins, there's building materials, asbestos, all sorts of things. I would love to hear a list of the really severe stuff that nobody really thinks about when they say, "Oh yeah, I had cancer," or "I had a heart attack," or this bad thing happened to my kidneys. Well, it might not be just at your old age or your genetics, because that's what people always go to. It's probably these massive amounts of toxins in their body, and I'm curious what those actually are and how they're affecting people.
There's so many in different areas, and like I said, each toxin can affect a person differently.
That's the genetic predisposition
variability,
they have.
and exactly. So, remind me to go over diffusers at some point. But before we get there, I want to talk about, answer your question, like, more exact. And again, legally, all speculative, right? If you're looking at a place like Long Island that has one of, if not still, last time I checked, the highest cancer rate in the country, I can tell you that the way creosote is used is not properly done.
That's for railways, right?
It's railways, poles, like telecommunication poles, things like that. Absolute known carcinogen. I've worked with people from Long Island who, like, we're talking like young guys, 19-year-olds with kidney cancer, things like that. I would say that that's something you need to watch out for, and I would recommend specific supplements of dealing with that because it can be hard to test. That's a popular one. If we're looking at what I call the tri-state syndrome, which is if I take a graph and we look at waterways, and we go from New York, PA, some parts of Connecticut, and New Jersey especially. People, because my name gets all around, people who call me are within a few miles of a waterway, and if we look at their water, if we go on the sites and we test, you will see trichloroethylene in higher amounts in every single one of those places. To me, it's the force multiplier for whatever is sitting dormant in your body. And it compounds and compounds over years.
What's trichloroethylene?
I'm not going to go too much into that and why it's even there. Because that's where I get into territory that might,
No problem.
Does it make sense legally?
We talk about it later.
But you can Google it, and then you could find out who's manufactured it and where it's used. So I'm gonna leave that out for this. The bottom line is it's an industrial, okay? And if you can test and see if it's in the body. You just test, you can order. But if you've ever seen applied kinesiology, for anyone who's watching this, where people literally hold a substance, they don't know what they're testing, and their muscles go weak. They have advanced machines now that do this online. You've experienced some of them in New York. Every single person that has these weird modern syndromes in the tri-state will come up weak for this file. Women, really weak. Okay? We're talking about weird things like hypermobility, chronic strep infections as a kid, polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, weird allergies, weird inexplainable symptoms, and multiple system issues at young ages. Generally starting around the age of 12. Girls in 8th grade generally start to have these symptoms kick up, and men generally around 18 and 19.
Was this chemical around, say, in the 1900s?
Yes.
So what changed where you see a lot more cases of autoimmunity now?
At certain times in the 80s and 90s, they drained different waterways. And I think that had something to do with the circulation of the process. And that I want to kind of lower, again, into that territory of people coming after what I'm saying. But what changed is everybody's system is different from 1989 on. And I've talked about this before. RFK has talked about this before. 1989 is the year everything changed. It's the year that autism exploded. It's the year that asthma exploded, autoimmune diseases, everything seemed to have a upshot. And then we can talk about other years like 2002 and 2003 because that's a separate issue. Because I've looked at graphs of all these things and I've tried to compare like when the shifts happened. But generally speaking, 1989 is we knew that there was a big issue going on.
Was it vaccines?
Vaccines were absolutely a part of it. So there's a famous toxicologist in New York, and he basically came up with a list or estimate of roughly 20 things. And I believe he's kind of cut it down to 13 at this point, if I'm correct on that. But he came up with a list of statistical significant things in 1989 that were new that could easily or partially explain the autism epidemic and the issues that kids were having. I'll go over some of them. The vaccine schedule was one. There was a big shift there. There was a higher use of phthalates. There were more volatile organic compounds. Glyphosate's the other big one. Wi-Fi radiation. All these things. And so that's why it's also so hard to pinpoint, what's causing this in this person? What's causing this? And so you go online or you're on Instagram or Facebook and you see these ads, you see all these videos, and they scare people to death because there's some truth to what they're saying, like all these contaminants. Well, is it EMF doing it? Oh, no, it's not. It's fluoride. It's chlorine in the water, all these things. It's a mix of, it's so hard to isolate these factors. You have to go into a person's history and go, okay, you got a new soap you used at your house and now your hands hurt. And it gets really specifically clinically working with people like that. And that's where it gets a little more difficult. But to your question is why is it affecting people now? We had all these things from a young age already start to whack people. And granted, it's the late 80s and going into the 90s. Now we've had 20 plus years of propaganda that the sun is bad for you. And so now you have rampant vitamin D deficiency. And at a time when people weren't talking about or supplementing with it, because supplementation with vitamin D really only got popular in the late 2000s. And it really in the last 10 years. Okay? So you got that. Then you have the increased usage of blue light, right? Because now everyone's on phones. So
all the time.
So now you have the baseline of a newborn, and now you're 89, so now you're 35, 36, or post 89. Everybody between 36 and under has now a baseline that is not as strong as their parents to deal with these things. So if you have a fully developed endocrine system, these things aren't still good for you, these toxic exposures. But at least they were able to immunologically handle it better. and they're more developed and able to. So last thing, and I'll go back to, so if they have a SNP, everybody talks about MTHFR, and we can talk about that more later if you want, or COMT, these genetic points where your body doesn't handle substances well, that always existed. But those people now, from an early age, were whacked immunologically. So now their immune systems aren't as good. They're overran. So the opportunistic stuff in their body is producing more of these negative toxic byproducts, and it's activating the SNPs. So people who were born before that handle it better, and everybody born after 89 handles these problems worse. You're thinking?
Yeah.
That's a big one. Yeah.
This is something that what I'm about to say, we should probably be careful of.
Yes. Okay.
But I want to figure out why this stuff is here, and if it's being done on purpose or if it's done on accident. You can look at a lot of these environmental things and the Industrial Revolution and how all the chemicals were used and all that, and you can say, well, nobody knew. And, they kind of wash their hands of the situation and say, well, it was an accident. We didn't know asbestos was a big problem. We didn't know these things were issues. But at the same time, you put all the pieces together, and it looks like a lot of these chemicals and environmental things and heavy metals and all these issues are being done on purpose. Mm-hmm. And the question I always ask is, who is doing it and why are they doing it? And my theory on why they're doing it, we're not going to get into maybe exactly who. We can name certain groups, but maybe not on here.
Pretty funny. Yeah.
But why are they doing it? To me, it's they want to eliminate and depopulate the native population of America and Europe, and they do not like us existing, and the large majority of our population has been beaten down, where the men have low testosterone and won't have conversations like this, and they will allow their women to run the relationships, and everybody's sick and everybody's messed up and everybody's too weak to fight back, so that when the central bank digital currency comes and the foreign invasion comes, there is no resistance from the native population, and our nation is effectively taken over by the people that control it. And that's at least my opinion in terms of one arm of this. I think spiritually we're also taken over. Our religions are held captive.
Sure.
Our school system is held captive. Our money system is held captive. And it's a similar group doing it to all of them. And this is just, the conversation we're having from a medical lens and the research lens that you've done is just, this is one arm of it that destroys our population. And the fact is, even though all this shit is happening, we're still able to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to blackpill people. I'm just saying, look, this stuff is happening, but we can also still have these conversations. We still have the power to create and manifest everything that we want. And so I'm curious, in your opinion, what is this stuff being done on purpose?
Well, anybody in the last 5 years now, looking post-COVID, if they don't think that the government does nefarious things for whatever their interest is, whether it's power, money, or something more esoteric of destabilizing a population, they're out of their minds. There's evidence. The Senate and Fauci, these documents came out. They suppressed the fact that ivermectin could work for this, or that it worked for the first SARS epidemic. So there's obviously nefarious things in question here. So the question is, my answer to that is, I think it's both. And I don't think it's just one individual group. I think it's multiple groups. And also, I think some of it is just corporate self-interest. Vaccine companies knew for a long time that there were problems with a lot of these. In Japan, they knew over 20 years ago that the MMR affected mortality rate in children, and I believe they pulled it off the schedule. So that's one aspect of it. It's also cheaper to dispose of some of these chemicals in the way they were.
Just throw them in the river?
Yeah, just toss them in the river. We don't even know what the hell has been tossed in there over the years. How are so many of these chemicals in the... There are radioactive... If you go on the website in New Jersey and you just look, you can look up and see that there's actually uranium and all these certain things in some of these areas.
We've talked about where I'm from. The lake in the town
lake
where
in
I'm
the
from
area?
is a Superfund site dedicated by the
Sure.
EPA. Is a toxic site, and all the factories used to dump all the stuff in the little river that led into the
Government
lake.
does a great job. I mean, it's fantastic, right? People trust that the government does. You go to the DMV and look at how unorganized it is, and you want these people managing your health, right? And we should trust them. I mean, everything with USAID that's come out, like these weird studies behind transgender insect studies, like tens of millions of dollars. So I think it's both. And some of it is just stupidity and negligence. Like some people don't think that these things might be as problematic, like asbestos. They probably didn't think that was problematic. But even asbestos, things like that, like there's we can talk about this. There's SV40 in the Pfizer jab. Like a geneticist, you can look this up.
What's SV40?
Simian virus 40. So it was first known during the time of the polio vaccine. It was contaminated with it, and it was speculated that it was responsible for the cancer epidemic in the country since. And so some people, if you talk like Dr. Jack Cruz, who has an awesome channel, he's off the charts, like conspiracy level to like the millionth degree. And he was one of the guys who really made it known about how bad blue light was, or the excessive amount of blue light, non-native EMF. And he goes full conspiracy, but he talks about this as a physician too, seeing all these turbo cancers. And SV40 is in one of those vaccines. And so that completely explains, it's an oncogenic virus. So for people who don't understand what that is, it's a virus that is literally cancer causing. In addition to that, it's a disease multiplier. And I think that a lot of people who have these weird symptoms, so not to get into like one of my other business, but I have a lot of younger employees, college age employees, and they have all these weird stuff, all these weird symptoms, and it started at a point 2 years prior to being vaccinated and almost to a month that they were vaccinated, because I love these crazy patterns, right? And so some people manifest as they get dizzy. Like people talked about that with post-COVID symptoms, and now we have it established that we know that people who have vaccine injury, they get dizzy, okay? Orthostatic hypotension. Other people, they have weird stomach pains. Some people, psychosis, anxiety, all sorts of hormonal imbalances, weird issues, and I see a lot of people asking me these questions. So I think that it's not just a cancer-causing virus, which we know, it's a fact, simian virus 40, you can look this up. But I think that in an event that your body is trying to attack and mitigate that retrovirus, and retrovirus, similar to like HIV, HTLV1, hepatitis, it's a retrovirus. It's constantly trying to replicate and wreck your immune system. Your immune system's dealing with that, so then these other sensitivities or microorganisms in your body, now your immune system is focusing on this thing that could cause cancer and kill you. So it's focusing on that, and now everything else is going haywire.
The infections grow.
What
else grows?
Ability to handle mold, sensitivities to anything that if someone's more sensitive to light, the energy in the system is going to deal with this, and now they might be more sensitive to these other things like the excessive blue light, the cell phones, the dopamine, mood issues. I can't tell you the amount of people that are having, their life is fine on paper, they don't know why they're anxious, and they're having these crazy breaks. Like these crazy anxiety.
It's because the body knows that the chemicals in there and the toxins in there.
It's trying to catch up. It's trying to catch up. And their sensitivity, there's a SNP, MAO, there's MAO-A and MAO-B. And this is where we can go down some weird potential conspiracy rabbit holes. I notice this in 2021, that a lot of people who had it, these weird panic disorder, PTSD, stress breaks where they feel like they couldn't cope, they feel like they were, unquote, felt like they were losing their mind, were the strongest people that I knew. Tough people that always handled stress, were go-getters. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, it almost seems like it's affecting certain people, warrior class type people. So if you want to go by the idea that some of this might have been designed, because it was made in a lab, there's enough evidence to point to that now. COVID. Not just the vaccine, but COVID. We don't know. We still don't know what the hell it's doing. It's something that's existed for a few years and it was made in a lab. Like we may say like, All right, there's these associated post-COVID symptoms. You get dizzy. Fine. You get this stomach issue, whatever it is. And that's where people are now taking nicotine and having these weird benefits with these nicotine patches and having benefits with that weird elongating respiratory symptoms anyway. But we don't know what it's going to do. Just like we don't know what the vaccine's going to do. We know what HIV does when it's at 20, 30 years of it. We know what herpes does. We know what hepatitis does. We don't know what this bioweapon made, in a lab that got unleashed into the public. We don't know who it's going to affect. And in my opinion, it seems to be making a really tough, really strong, independent thinkers have mental breaks.
Is your conspiracy idea that it was made specifically to target those people to make them weaker?
I can't prove it, but I would say that there's something to it. There's something to it. Or it makes people that have a tendency of aggression, it makes them feel weak and helpless.
Docile.
And docile.
That's probably why they're spraying all the chemicals too. We are in the tri-state area right now.
Yeah.
I look up every morning. It's sunny, and then about 15 planes, come spraying something, and then 2 hours later it's a haze.
So where I am in Jersey, I see a lot of those, let's call them chemtrail-looking things in the air all the time. And I try really hard not to go down conspiracy rabbit holes, but I've never seen them in this amount. And I'm also seeing weird things kick up with people. We had this weird respiratory cough that people had for 100 days. They nicknamed the 100-day cough. People were going in and tested. Flu was negative. COVID was negative. And just people's behavioral. There was 1 week. This is the second week of February. Second and third week of February. I literally saw people have no cold symptoms, but they were experiencing extreme exhaustion and behavioral changes. And then that same week, a lot of people developing sarcomas, really rare, weird type of cancers. And you put it together, it's either my reticular activation system is a little too much, and it's just naturally finding these law of attraction type patterns,
Yep.
or people are reaching out and saying and just saying, "Hey, look, this is weird. I don't feel like this normally." Weird symptoms. I have a feeling it's carbon tetrachloride. Okay? I've been muscle testing people, and I've been seeing that vial come up weak in a lot of different people. Some people are also coming up with radium.
That's what you think they're spraying. You're guessing.
I'm just saying it just seems to make sense to me.
Okay.
It's what I seem to find because I have different kits for different toxins, and I'll test through a kit to be objective, and everybody blows out to that one. So if you Google symptoms of it, it makes sense with a lot of the stuff I'm talking about. It's a carcinogen. And so is it on purpose, or is there a contamination? Maybe somebody was just dumping some stuff and it got in the water supply too. That's also quite that's an easy explanation too. Regardless, there's clearly something going on since specifically, I want to say, the end of last spring.
So about a year.
Yeah. Like weird people. I mean, I just a lot of dizziness in young people, specifically men. Yeah. There was a week. It started in March where people had idiopathic teeth pain, meaning they don't know. They go to the dentist and everybody's having teeth pain that they don't know what it is. To the point where like, oh, maybe we should take out wisdom teeth. I experienced this myself in this area. Okay, and what I can tell you is, and a lot of times it's one side of the face. And so, if there's any dentists out there or anybody watching this, a lot of people were talking about this online too. Like, oh, my teeth hurt this week. Is it the new COVID? And it's like, how much of that is just, well, it could be these mutations, could be viral shedding from vaccinations. It could be our bodies can't handle these infections like echovirus, which can cause teeth pain. And that usually comes out around summer and August because there was a kick up of that around that time too. Maybe their bodies can't handle these infections as well because our immune systems are run down because of chemicals or because of having COVID in the body, or they were vaccinated and immune systems aren't working as well. There's a lot of different potentials as to what could be doing these things, but it's pretty much a handful of things. It's either got to be something in the air and water, like a toxin. The immune systems aren't doing as well. We got the whole 5G factor now. Like, is the body dealing with, because we're talking about mold. Mold's always been around. Right? But now we have a lot of radiation.
And it grows much faster with radiation.
It grows much faster with radiation. And so now we have 5G, and now all of a sudden people can't handle mold. Now, mold's a problem. In the Bible, they told you even in the Bible, if your house was moldy, to burn it down. Yes. So it's always been a problem, right? But now people can't fight it off. Like to the point where there's a lot of people who are more sensitive to coffee now because there's mycotoxin in it, and that's definitely a thing that's kicked up in the last couple of years.
So I want to go back to the blue light that we spoke about a little bit, because in my industry, blue light is a big thing. You know, you're
screwed.
Look right here, we can get the phone. You know, if I pull my screen time, it's high. Yeah. You know, I got my laptop over there.
You have no choice.
I have to for what my business is, and there's benefits to the business. You know, I can work remote. I can be wherever I want to be. In the world. I think one thing to eliminate is obviously the Wi-Fi. You know, maybe it's good to attach to an Ethernet, right, to eliminate the Wi-Fi side of it. But regardless, you know, there's going to be some kind of Wi-Fi. There's going to be some kind of internet connection, and there is going to be blue light. And so my entire goal is to make my body resilient enough so I can absorb 16 hours a day of blue light, and it just is what it is because my business functions and thrives on that. So how healthy, how energetic can I be? How clean of toxins and mold and heavy metals can I personally be so that when I do have the blue light and I do have the EMF and I do have the Wi-Fi from the work that I do, I'm not as affected, or I can function on a normal basis. That's personally how I think about it. And I'm curious your thoughts as a medical professional in that regard, and you know how to protect maybe against blue light and Wi-Fi radiation and EMF besides just eliminating all the toxins and besides eliminating mold, because we know that stuff's going to grow and going to get worse from all this. But what can we do to, you know, stop the blue light from killing us and the EMF and the Wi-Fi?
So real quick, I want to piggyback off a comment you made. So even if you turn off your Wi-Fi, if you live in a building or if you buy other houses in New York City, there's nothing you can do. Like,
I lived in Miami, and I'm like, I look around me.
There's apps you can look up all the different waves you're getting.
Well, the towers. I lived in a building with 1,000 people. There's 1,000 Wi-Fi routers in that building, and I'm just getting cooked.
So yeah, and last thing I'll mention on that before I answer that question, what you can do. And a few years ago, I had a girlfriend. This was around the COVID time. She was her cycle. She was always regular, never had hormone issues of any type, and all of a sudden, period irregularity and all sorts of weird symptoms. And I said, out of curiosity, by any chance, have noticed any new construction recently, anything like that? Because I always go through the steps. Are you using any new chemicals? Are you using new laundry detergents? Are you doing this? I walk them through. Have you been sick? Have you felt sick in the last month? Whatever it is. And there was a cell tower, right across from her building that was just put in. So these things are absolutely affecting people. There's no question about it. And there's over 1,000 published studies on the fact of cell phones, affecting the body negatively, sperm count, testosterone, and of course we put them right down here. So you're weakening your resilience to things just by having a lower good pro-sex hormone profile. It makes you resilient. But so now to talk about what you can do, I look at the body. I've talked to you about this a little bit before. It's like a collection of stuff, and you're a person. It's like a bank robber. Okay, person is a law-abiding citizen their entire life. Then they go into that bank, and they rob the bank, or they try to rob the bank. They went in literally under a minute. They went from a law-abiding citizen to a criminal. Your body goes from a healthy person or a stack of stuff to a sick person, a diseased person, in a second. It was the buildup of all the toxic sludge, the deficiency, and the microorganisms sitting in there, and then boom, an event happened to put you over that edge. And we can talk about that more further if you want. But what you can do is have less crap stored up in your system. You can make your system stronger. And the way we do that, so the way when I work with people, what I use my machines to go through different points, to clear the different meridians, the circuits, the organ systems, the fascia, so that there's less nagging problems, there's less opportunistic infection sitting there, there's less allergies to things, so that when an event happens, one of two things. One, they're strong enough to get back and not be in homeostasis, and maintain homeostasis, so they don't end up diseased, or whatever can happen is not as bad. Case in point, let's just say that one of the things that people can do, we know this, with just regular chronic health, people who strength resistance train and exercise on a regular basis, they can have diabetes, heart disease, and cancers and have better outcomes than people who even don't have those conditions, for example, under stress. Like COVID was a big one. People who died of COVID, more than 90% of them had comorbidities. They had high blood pressure, anxiety, obesity, hypertension, I might have said diabetes, cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease. So
that was the final nail in the coffin.
That's the final nail in the coffin. And we could also talk about the respiratories that they were, doing. We're putting people on respirators. We're putting people on respirators early, killing people that way. And remdesivir, the antiviral drug that we know was killing a lot of people, that was very toxic. So was it really the nail in the coffin? I'm sure it was for certain people, of course. Although they love to write over COVID death on as many people.
You get paid out from it.
Yeah, because they're making a lot of money from that. But so the point is you want to clean house, like we do spring cleaning, and different cultures, by the way, like
throughout history, have done this.
Have done parasite cleaning. We're one of the few that don't. If you go to places in the Caribbean, people still do stuff like that too. They know. I mean, we assume that we don't have bugs in us, but the CDC, they talk. I think it's like 60 million Americans they say has parasites, and I think it's probably even worse than that. And that's just when they're talking about parasites, they're only talking about like worms and protozoa. They're not talking about the different fungal species that you have, or the different viral infections you have in their body, the retrovirus that you picked up when you were 19 and then it went dormant. So what a person needs to do is they need to clean house. They need to routinely, if they're looking for maintenance purposes, they need to develop a relationship with their body so they know, hey, I don't feel right. What could this be? Was I around sick people recently? Did I eat something funky? And try to kill off some of the crappy bacteria, antiviral protocols, anti-parasite protocols. I use my machine and routinely go through different points, and I do this with people who want maintenance work too. I'll scan their body and I'll see, okay, you need this here. We need to give you support. We need to take more off the top. I don't want to get too into an individual case study, but someone that you know very well, with no names, I worked on her who needed a heart transplant. Am I allowed to go a little bit without names?
Yeah, go without names,
okay.
yeah.
So this person, anytime that they were sick, would basically almost need to be hospitalized, or were. But we worked on this person for the priorities. In this case, it wasn't the kidney, it wasn't any urinary tract thing, but we worked on the heart to make the cardiovascular system strong and the respiratory system strong. So recently, and this was in February, when an infection went around that was knocking people out, this person they developed a kidney stone around that time, but the heart, which was at a very risky point, was unaffected and was fine. So the point is, we start with the weakest chunk in the armor, and we build that area up so that it is resilient when these things happen. Because God forbid, what could have happened if that area of the system wasn't stable? And now you have an infection or a bug, and you go there, and it takes one medical error or one not getting the exact prescription or nutraceutical that you need to fix the person, and then unfortunate things can happen. So start there, focus on the weak things, the biggest problems first, and get those areas strong and back to a balance or homeostasis so that you are resilient when these black swan events happen.
Let's talk about the medical system as a whole. I have seen countless times, and you're around it way more than I am, mm-hmm. like because it's your job, mm-hmm. obviously. But I saw it with my grandparents. I've seen it with friends and their families, and just extended family, and all of this, where grandparent, they're fine. Mm-hmm. They have a heart attack. They seem like they're fine, and then they have a heart attack. They go in, they get a pill. 5 years later, they develop some kind of thing with their kidney because they've been taking this pill and it's affecting their kidney and all that. They give another pill. They go in, they're hospitalized again, they get another pill. They have another heart attack. Oh, we're going to have to do this. They do this surgery, another pill. And then at this point, they're 75. They've been sedentary for 15 years. Mm-hmm. They psychologically, maybe they don't have a lot going on. They're They're just, they're hanging out. They're old. They're retired.
We fall apart.
Yeah, they're falling apart, and they're eating shit food, and it's almost like they probably should have died a couple heart attacks ago, or whatever it is. I just saw it with my grandparents. My grandpa had, I think, 3 heart attacks. His kidneys were bad. He was on dialysis for 8 years, but it was another pill, another pill, another pill, another pill, another day in the hospital, nursing home, another pill, and it was this cash extraction between the insurance companies and the hospitals and the medical system and the pharma companies as a whole, where they make everybody pill poppers so they can extract cash from them over and over and over. And to me, there's another route. Is you take care of yourself, you solve these things holistically and naturally, and you work with energy to fix these pathways, and you can live for a long, long time. And To me, I'm a conspiracy theorist, okay? I was watching Alex Jones at 15 years old. I look at this and I'm like, it's very clear what's happening. Obviously, there's corporate profit to be made, but It's very clear what's happening here, that these corporations and these companies do not care about people. They do not care about your health. They care about extracting as much cash as possible from the market for their own benefit, obviously. And they're turning everybody into pill poppers. You look at 18-year-old girls, 20-year-old girls. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. SSRI. You look at these kids that are these guys that are high energy teenagers that don't want to focus in school because school's bullshit. Run by
Adderall.
Here's the Adderall. The school's bullshit run by 35-year-old feminist liberal women that are single that barely have an idea of what's going on, that shouldn't be allowed to vote. Okay, and of course the teenage boys aren't going to pay attention, and then they go to the doctor and say Adderall, focus, Adderall, and they completely change him as a person.
This is funny. Nick's trying to get everybody after me for talking about health.
I'm just trying to get clips.
No, but the reality is, I know it's funny as hell, but no, the reality is to what you're saying. It is, and again, it's 2 parts. Some of it's definitely deliberate. I'll talk about that. And then there's the other part, which is the profit-making model, and that incentivizes it. So the government makes it profitable to be for what they're trying to make happen.
It's incentivized.
Yeah, and so, well, for example, most cancer, 90-something% of it, you can argue is caused by viruses. There's 8 main ones. Like, people know that HTLV1 and then 2 cause leukemia, for example. People know that hepatitis C and B cause liver cancers, et cetera. And people talk about HPV causing cervical cancer, and that's overblown, but let's put that to the side for now. You Google any type of cancer, you'll find numerous studies that support different viruses having a part of it.
Parasites as well?
Parasites as well. I think the parasites are really more of the last end of, now you have the virus and you have this thing, and then the immune system goes, hey, why now you have this? But let's go here, because most people in the United States are dying of, in terms of diseases, because the 3rd largest cause of death is medical error, just so you know, right? Fact.
Yep.
So let's just say, so we got heart disease, cancer, and we got diabetes, and then kidney disease, which is often a result of having diabetes, right? Okay, and then we got Alzheimer's. Let's talk about these. So viruses, I just explained a little brief link between viruses and cancer, okay, which is extremely profitable. The average chemo round is like it's in the hundreds of thousands, right? Then we have diabetes and the metabolic diseases, which of course diet and toxins have a massive play in. But what a lot of people don't know is a lot of diabetes is caused by a bacteria called C. pneumonia. It's in the chlamydia family. It's not an ST. It's not an STI. Statistically speaking, probably everybody past the age of 50 has it. If you test people for it, most people have it. It's dormant. It's an intracellular infection. So your body is, and this is a whole different look on metabolic disease that no one wants to talk about, and you're going to see, so in case I go off a tangent, pull me back. All right? I don't want to do the Trump weave.
I got you.
But because I weave naturally, I know that sometimes, but we got to go back to that. So you have this, people have these different infections. It's not just that. There's also cytomegalovirus, which is in like, some people estimate up to 90% of like the country. But you have these low-level infections. They don't kill you directly, okay? Your body, so you have these things. Your body has to come up with a immune response. It has to make white blood cells, and it has to go after these things constantly to keep them at bay, right? And so what happens is, and by the way, as you get older, those immune cells aren't as good, and the thymus, the immune system control center, shrinks. And that's when we see more of these disease conditions, right? It's in people who are older, okay? But now, your body has to come up with an immune response to deal with these low-level infections. So then what has to happen? There's an inflammatory response as a byproduct. That's why when people have colds, they feel inflamed, they feel sick, or people with Lyme disease, every infections make you feel inflamed, make you feel crappy, right? And this also goes into the man flu and why guys feel crappy when they get sick, because their testosterone tanks. Because pregnenolone is being stolen to deal with this, to come up with more cortisol.
And for those who don't know, pregnenolone is the master hormone. And
that
everything else is created
which
from.
Which is bad, supposedly, for all these years, right?
We could talk about that, too. That's another one.
So cholesterol and vitamin D. So the process makes pregnenolone, which is the master hormone, which makes progesterone, and DHEA, which makes testosterone, okay? So, but to go back. So now your body has an inflammatory response. Multiple things happen when this continues. Your adrenal glands have to continuously make more cortisol, which means your body has to steal from making good hormones, progesterone, testosterone, the sex hormones. It steals from that and steals the energy to put out the fire from the inflammation. So now people have adrenal fatigue or burnout, okay? The thyroid, under these inflammatory conditions, the active hormone, which comes from a hormone, so T3, which is the active hormone, comes from, and by the way, I'm simplifying these biochemical processes because I know there's some dork online who's like, well, you missed this step, meh. Like, the reality is, it's like, it's okay, you know functionally that this is how it works, so shut up. So, but basically, it steals, so the T4 will now convert to something called reverse T3. So now the thyroid isn't making the hormone correctly too. In this process, over time, the cortisol, and people who have, like, if you want to look up the most advanced form of this, it's called Cushing's. And it's generally speaking when people have a tumor in the pituitary gland or the adrenal glands. Your body makes hypercortisol, and cortisol literally in excess destroys every cellular type of tissue in the body over time. Okay? So now what happens is the receptor sites on cells, they get damaged, they get impaired. And so it takes more what? Insulin to do what it's supposed to do in the cell. And so over time, people become insulin resistant. So everybody's just thinking, well, it's because I eat a lot of carbs all the time. Well, that's not really helping. And the seed oils, which are blocking the cellular respiration, that's not helping either. But the big thing behind a lot of this process that no one's looking at is you have these intracellular and low-level infections causing up this entire chronic immune cascade, and now you end up with metabolic syndrome, a pot belly, or diabetes eventually, hypertension, or blood pressure. These infections also have been found in calcium areas in the heart. So the cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, all these metabolic conditions, almost all of them, people have a immunological issue as a basis behind a lot of these things. And you can just look this up and see data, and people have talked about this for years. Sometimes people get bit by an animal and then they gain weight. There's all sorts of immune and metabolic shifts that happen because of, and then people talk about this as the gut microbiome, and it's a real thing. And antibiotics, of course, wipe those out. But this is something that people aren't looking at. And if you look at all these chronic conditions, if you look at, say, Hashimoto's, which women really deal with, there's correlations with Coxsackie virus being present. And I found people like, hey, you have this. Did you have Coxsackie virus? And some people, oh my God, I had that right before this happened. No one ever told me this. It's associated with type 1 diabetes. All these different infections. So basically my point is, and to go back to this whole thing, because I don't want to.
You're good.
Pick up any of these things. I don't, because I want to go back.
Go for it.
Since the early 90s, we knew in literature that microcurrents would deactivate these infections. At Albert Einstein School of Medicine in New York City, you can look up patents on this, microcurrents, Dr. Cali and Lyman. They knew in the early 90s that they could take viruses and infections with microcurrents similar to the same range of a pacemaker and neutralize these things, rendering them harmless in the body.
Like the one that causes diabetes.
All these conditions.
And all sorts of the ones that cause cancers and everything.
Yep. This was a turning point for me when I found this research when I was in college, and that opened up Pandora's box. I wasn't a conspiracy theorist before that, by the way. That sort of opened the door because I was like, if we don't know about this, if this is being directly suppressed, which it factually was, what else don't we know? So to answer the entire question as to why it could be happening, if the powers that be in different groups in different pockets, if they knew that there are safe, effective ways to dealing with these incurable viruses and incurable conditions, then people wouldn't be dying in at least as large numbers as we are now in cardiovascular disease, diabetes, kidney issues, Alzheimer's, many other diseases, cancers especially. How much money would they have to pay in Social Security? And the system's already bankrupt. They couldn't handle that. How could we sustain a society? So it's not convenient for them, being the government, to have us live that long and live healthy. Because if you live healthy, by the way, your immune system, and this happens to a lot of people who do these kind of therapies that I talk about and use, their hormone levels improve. You've seen this with other people.
Yeah.
If your hormone levels improve, you're happier, which means people aren't necessarily going to need the antidepressant anymore because their catecholamines are
They spend less money.
They spend less money. So women will spend less on cosmetics. They'll spend less on stuff to make them feel better. Okay? And then on top of that, men's testosterone goes up. So now they're more resilient. They're less hive-mindy. And they're more willing to say, no, I'm not dealing with this.
I believe that they have all this technology already. They know how to use it, most likely. You know, the military is probably 50 years ahead of what's public knowledge.
I'm a little biased. I think mine's better, but that's okay. But that's okay.
You know, I just you know.
No, but you're right. They've had data on this.
Look what happened to Tesla.
Since the early 90s.
Look what happened to Tesla, for example. Tesla knew how to basically extract energy from the atmosphere, as you and I know. And same as the Egyptians did with the pyramids.
Which we, by the way, now know in the last few months that, hey, this is most likely a power grid.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
which was conspiracy for
so then
years.
it makes me wonder what else out there is super advanced that we've discovered as a race, but is not shown to the public and people like us.
And that's what happened to me, and that's why I went on. Dude, I didn't care about the Federal Reserve and conspiracies and Kennedy assassinations and all these things. I didn't get into that until this opened my mind up. Because when I read that patent, and I had this moment like, holy shit, if this exists, what else is out there and what else don't we know? And when you found that you were in high school, I found that when I was basically 19. So you go down this rabbit hole of questioning anything, and then your brain just gets primed, especially for men, because our brains aren't, prefrontal cortexes, we're not fully developed till like 25. So it's perfect priming years. So now we start to look and see these things. And the problem is that more often than not, we're actually right. Sometimes we're wrong, but more often than not, we're right.
I've not to brag or anything, but I've been right about all this stuff. The whole shutdown. Lockdown happened, the corona thing. I'm like, I'm a little worried. And I was still at home with my parents. This is 2020. I'm young at that time. Yeah. And I go, Dad, we should go get some supplies, like just in case. This is about the week or two before. And 2 days after that, we went and did it. 2 days after that, everyone was going nuts. Yeah. And so we'd already stocked up. And then I'm like, this isn't real.
Yeah, right?
This isn't
good. This doesn't make sense.
Because for the past, 5 years, I'm watching all these things like Illuminati, blah, 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 whatever. And I'm like, there's no way that this is real. They're going to shut this thing down for whatever reason. And then I was just looking at the numbers. I was looking at the numbers. And then I start to see that the flu has miraculously dropped to zero cases. Yeah. And then, for me, that was one of the things that made it click. I was just like, oh, they're just marking these things as corona. And
and the bars are shut down. You can't be in the bar. Can't be in the bar after 10 p.m. Because at 10 p.m., COVID's really bad. COVID's really bad at 10. You get COVID, you die. You die in the parking lot. Just like there were all these factories where people were dropping like flies. I heard this the other day. I love baby boomers. But I heard some booming the other day, like, oh, we had to get the vaccine. All these people were dropping dead in factories. I was like, were you watching CNN? Was it MSNBC? What were you watching?
Because if you look at the death numbers, it's like, oh, there's no more cardiovascular death. It's all
isn't that funny
it's
how
all
it kind
COVID.
of leveled out?
Yeah.
You know, and in some cases dropped. There's reasons for that too. But and then everybody got sick in the following years. Kids' immune systems weren't developing because they weren't around staph and strep as much and developing the immune system.
And they got the vax.
And they got the vaccine, which we got to be careful because that gets censored and taken off everywhere. Still, despite the data, but whatever. We're past that point of that type of censorship. But yeah, so there's also now you were right about a lot of stuff. I was right about a lot of stuff. I was wrong about this. So I knew that my instinct was like, run the vaccine's crazy, bad idea. I knew that it wasn't going to kill people in the amount that it was, and I knew that the stress of it was going to mess up people's immune systems and cause a lot of issues. Later on, we figured out that it might be the number one comorbidity was anxiety, not even obesity, because the media was stressing out everybody to death. I want to keep talking about this because I want to talk about vitamin C and these things and how they fell into place in here and how it adds confidence when you know some of these tools, but. So we knew that I was wrong about one thing. I didn't know or expect it to have at the time a long-term effect on certain people who already had issues. And there's other factors which we talked about, chemicals and 5G and things that might have weakened people's systems. But I was wrong about. The funny thing is there's an entire population who will probably for the rest of their lives be conspiracy theorists because they were right about this. And all they had to do was just not trust what was being told. So sometimes those people are going to be wrong, but their instinct was right about. So they throw it. Now everything's a conspiracy. So it's a tough line to balance that because
I see. Not to interrupt and pull you off, I see it happen in my industry, for example, where it's like, well, everyone's a scammer. You sell an info product, you sell a course, you're a scammer. Well, no, that's not the case.
It's a Northeast thing too, by the way. People in the Northeast really like that. I think
but it's like, oh, you're a scammer. Well, no, but there's a large amount of people that are scammers. Yeah. Well, everything's not a conspiracy. Like, you see some of these conspiracies, like the whatever you think of QAnon or some of these things where some people are.
They got really good hats.
Some people almost have a mental illness with some of the things that.
Schizophrenia.
Yes, they almost develop schizophrenia from it, but. There are real conspiracy theories, and it muddies the water a lot.
Yeah.
Right, where it almost prevents the actual truth
like the
from getting out
thing.
there.
The flat Earth thing was definitely made up by intelligence agencies to make people think that conspiracy theory was stupid because it's such a made up, stupid, obvious, incorrect conspiracy theory. So that is just a credit.
So wait, so it's not flat.
It's not flat.
Is it round? Is it hollow? What do you think?
God.
What do you think?
It's round. Okay, they've debunked this many times. It's pretty crazy. So they'll lump stuff. And by the way, they did that on purpose. Do you know who coined the term conspiracy theorist?
Was it the CIA?
It was the CIA.
Yeah.
And it was intentionally done to discredit the Freedom of Information Act. You can read all about this kind of stuff. They were discrediting that. There's all these. So the question is now is what are we currently buying into that we won't know about for a long time? Just like this chemical stuff that's going on. Chemtrails wasn't real, but then now Tennessee has a bill to try to ban them. Right? Did you see that?
I think it passed.
Hopefully
I'm
it did.
pretty sure it
knowledge
passed.
that exists. All these things that they did. If we're going down conspiracy rabbit holes, Operation Midnight, I think it's Midnight Climax, where the government was literally taking guys who were going to whorehouses essentially, getting them on LSD, and then doing mind control.
So
admitted, by the way, acknowledged.
I want to pull it back and relate it to us.
Okay.
So the CIA, for example, has documents released about remote viewing and astral projection.
Monroe Institute.
And, the Monroe Institute with the Gateway Project and Gateway Files and tapes and all that.
It's fun stuff.
Very cool, interesting stuff. Manifestation, creation, all of that. And so I have experienced manifestation sorts of things and stuff like that. We have conversations about this all the time. I would love to talk about how you and I met and how that ties into some of this stuff, and we can tie into the remote viewing and all sorts of things and some of the stuff that you even do if you want to get into that with your practice.
Okay.
So let's talk about how we met, which is quite wild.
Okay, I'll just tell you. So I'll just talk about it. It's out there, but I have a daily practice where I talk to God. Okay, and I'll say, you know, and at the time I was working on a project, and this was for monetary means. It wasn't, you know, I like making money with helping people in my health work, but this was something totally different from it. But this specific side project was mainly for monetary purposes, and I was frustrated with it, and I was like, God, I was like, is there something that you need me to do? Is there, you know, what do you want me to do? What do you want to get out of my way? What do I need to do for you and my purpose on this? What do you need me to do to get out of the way so that this other thing I want finally falls through? And then I let it go. And I did this at a very specific table at my store, which we'll leave nameless for a lot of reasons, okay? It was maybe 15 minutes later that I got a phone call from my mom, and she said, and I got to watch names, my mom was at a nail salon, and she goes, oh, do you know insert family name? Do you know those people? You know, the owner of the store told me, her name was Jill, I'll just say it. Jill is the owner of the store. No one's going to know what store this was. She goes, this certain individual, the family, they're having issues with mold and all sorts of stuff, and they grew up a town next to us, and they're having all these issues. And, you know, they can't figure out, and they swear it's this. And I said, okay. I was like, in my head, I immediately was like, this is God talking back to me. He says, dude.
Within 15 minutes.
Within 15 minutes. And roughly around that time. So, and I said, okay, fine. I go, Mom, tell them I'm not going to charge them a dime. I'm going to work on them. I'm going to fix their stuff. I'm going to fix the family. We're going to start working on these things. Within a couple hours, that family, who you know very, very well, you're basically connected to
my girlfriend is part of that family. My girlfriend is part of that family.
It's out there. He said that's it. So now they showed up. I didn't know what they looked like. Never saw them before. I said I'll work on them. The salon, the woman at the salon reached out to them. They showed up a couple hours after. Walked in, and sat down at the same exact table that I asked for this to happen. After introducing himself to me, that was the table they picked to sit. So I sat and talked with them, and they were telling me all these things, and I go, you know, I grew up a town next to you. I was in your town a lot. I go, I had some of these weird symptoms, like where your blood work is fine, you go to the doctor, their health is fine, but you get these weird annoying things that bother you that people can't figure out. And it reminded me of my sister, and the brother reminded me, so that the two siblings reminded me of almost a mirror of my sister and myself and stuff that we dealt with. And in some cases, they've way worse. And I realized I was like, I need to figure out what was going on in this area as to what is affecting people, and I need to let people know about it in a safe way and what to do about it. And by the way, so when I was in college, from high school to college, I was an annoying intellectual atheist shithead. Okay? I was one of those people. I had my own purpose. I was raised in a Catholic family, very great family, good religious family, and I went through that phase. And when I was a senior in college, my sister and my mother ran into a woman at, I think, someone's house party, and this woman was a medium, didn't know their last name, didn't know any information, and said, listen, your son, and there's a lot of stuff that she said, but she goes, your son is, there's something in the area that's messing up a lot of kids in the area, and your son's job, and he's here, he needs to figure this out. That's why he's here. And she said other stuff too, which I'll leave out of this, but she was right about a lot of things. She knew that I had a very specific species of mold in my body, and I went a year later to get a very expensive organic acid test, and that was the predominant species, and I needed the exact medication to treat it that she had mentioned. So I was freaked out, especially somebody who was tried to pretend they didn't believe in God and all these things, right? So all the years that I put off trying to do this, I always put it to the side. The medical stuff. Or I worked on people quietly, and for the most part, I've stayed on the radar. This is really like me finally putting a lot of this stuff out there, but
we can talk about that in a sec.
Yeah. So when I when that happened, I knew, hey, it was basically God saying, dude, this is I put you here for this reason.
To talk about this
To
stuff.
find this stuff out, help those people, figure out what's going on, and tell people ways that they can do to get rid of it. Because there's unique things. It's not just like, hey, stop eating carbs and you're going to feel better. This is something so unique that people who do this stuff, right, or the red light's not going to help. The people that have these syndromes, the mast cell activation stuff, the hypermobility.
That's stuff, by the way, people don't even realize.
They don't realize
because
how
nobody
common it is.
talks about it.
Nobody talks about it. These weird histamine responses that don't make sense. One day you're allergic to this, and then the next week you're not. And you do all these things. And a lot of these people have good health, but they have these weird things. And so I knew that I was like, you know what? This is the path that you want from me. And as much as I try to fight it, I have to go.
Right as they showed up.
Yep. And that's when, and it gets stranger. It gets stranger. So as that happens, it was a day or two later, I went to the cigar lounge, which we're not going to name. And it was 2 days after this, maybe 3. And it was the second time ever I was at this cigar lounge.
You saw me.
I didn't know you. I saw
A member of the family.
a member of the family who had been to my store that day when this all happened. The person I was now going to work on who mirrored my case history. And he was there with you. So what are the odds of that? And it was almost like this is something that I can't ignore this. Like I'm not trying to manifest
And
this.
I
not
do
magically putting it out there. It just
And I do social media, and I help people grow their brands and
And
their
I didn't know
audiences and
that.
all that.
and I didn't know that. And by the way, do I hate social media? I hate social media. I hate it, dude. I think so much of it's a necessary evil, and some people love it. And if you love it, you love it. But I've always been resistant to it. I never just didn't like it.
And so that's brought us to be sitting right here after having many discussions
It's crazy.
about, man, I think I mentioned to you, I said, Dave, have you ever thought about growing your brand? Like, I do this for a living for people. Not trying to pitch you or anything, just, hey, you could crush it because you have a lot of unique knowledge that most people don't, and you can speak well, and you're still a young guy, so you can relate to this stuff. Have you ever thought about it? And you're like, oh, I kind of hate that stuff, this and that. You mentioned a couple names you didn't like, whatever.
And you've seen me make joke spoof videos making fun of those people.
And
they're pretty good. They're pretty good for the record.
And we've just kind of like developed a friendship and gotten to the place where you're like, you know what, I'm ready. And you think that's all derived from that one moment where you asked God for that situation to happen.
100%. And I also think part of it is you needed to see me work on people so you knew that it wasn't placebo or craziness, that there were things that were intangible, and I could make a claim and you would see it work. That stuff was always fun for me. It was fun for me. I don't deal with skeptics and I don't deal with cynics. I used to deal with that when I was younger. I don't care. I don't care. You don't believe in what it is? Go over there. And
I'm the same way.
I just don't care anymore.
People weren't as skeptical about my stuff, but I'm a young kid. I'm smart. I'm doing well in school.
And you
good
crushed
grades.
it.
And I go to college and I'm there for 2 months and then I leave. And I've got teachers that I had respected maybe when I was in high school, family members, and friends' parents that all come up to me and say, you really should take some classes.
Yeah.
We're real skeptical about what you're doing.
You really need that.
Because, I mean, I went and sold cars. So it's like, well, losers go and sell cars, That's the look, right?
That's the thought process on it.
Well, that's the perception that I think people have. They see that. And then from there, I start the internet stuff. And then the questions changed from, why would you do that? You should really take some classes. Like, what are you even trying to do? To, hey, man, could you help me? Like, hey, how does that work?
It's the indoctrination. And most of it is well-meaning. Or misery loves company, right? So it's like, my life is like this. Therefore, I have to pull you down. You're shining, so I have to pull you down. It's doing something different. When family does it, it's generally speaking not nefarious. It's generally speaking,
I want the best for you.
I want them to not starve, and that's understandable. And, when I'm a parent, I'm just going to have some aspect of that, as much of a freaking radical as I have been. You have to, but then there's the other people around you. Sometimes they're friends or people in your circle, people around you, and they're miserable. And they have to make you miserable. Or you're trying to do this, let's judge you. because they are too afraid to do the thing, or it's too much change, or people are afraid.
I want to change gears slightly.
Whatever you want.
And I want to talk
having fun with
about
this.
me too. I want to talk about, because my audience, probably the people that are watching this, are probably 25 to 35, but we'll say 20 to 35 is the large majority of the people watching this.
Kids.
You're 35.
I know. Sometimes I don't feel it. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm right in the middle of that. I'm 26. I don't feel like I'm 26. I still feel young, but
I want to go back to that
right after this
in a second. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, what should the guy that is 20 to 35 right now watching this, because it's predominantly male that's watching this, what should they do to care about their health? I think I post some stuff about it. I give some good advice, and you got to eat clean, take care of yourself, routine, blah blah blah, the whole thing. But as a medical researcher and someone that works with people every single day, what should people be doing right now because we're right in that demographic after 89 that is getting hit? What should these people be doing right now so they can perform at the highest level and whatever they want to achieve in life?
Okay. As an OCD clinician type, my brain wants to immediately go, everybody's case is different, to pinpoint the worst thing that you have, and then we flip that switch. But outside of that, because I know that's what you want.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're not mineral deficient and get it through whole foods, like meaning a whole food supplement. People, there are some good things to these supplements that are getting mainstream now, like the Shilajits and the I'm trying to think of the Irish sea moss type stuff. That's what I don't know why I drew a blank on that, but get some good minerals in your body that aren't really contaminated. Go to the gym, strength train over cardio. 2, 3, 4 times a week. Resistance training, good resistance training 2 to 3 times a week can reduce the risk of cancer by 38%, which is fascinating. All-cause mortality goes down 50%, meaning you get in a car accident, your chances of surviving are higher if you're strong. Your mood will be better. You're harder to kill. Women will like you more. It might take you a few years if you're somebody who's doesn't have a natural muscular disposition, which is not most people. It's going to benefit you in that way. It's going to make you more confident. As you get stronger in the gym, you're going to feel stronger mentally. You're going to get the ability to deal with difficult things and challenges and adversity. And there's even something about going to the gym in the beginning as a person who's not in that kind of shape and doing exercises in front of people, and you get the stigma of, oh, people are watching me do this. So you get out of that, oh, I care if people are looking at me thing, which is going to help you in business, it's going to help you in sales. That's an easy starting point that there's not an excuse for people.
I'd like to add some,
I can keep going.
Sunlight, maybe being outside, because everyone's stuck inside now. I think potentially getting in a fight gym.
That's amazing, absolutely. And my boxing background and different martial arts, and I know you have some as well. So I want to add another thing to this. Often people grow more and hit their peak not by adding more stuff, and this is like Bruce Lee said stuff about this. It's by taking things away, or evasion is often the highest form of self-defense, metaphorically speaking. The things that crush young guys, it's trying to impress other people, and it's dating the wrong people and putting too much of your energy in women and even friend groups that suck the life force out of you. If your friends aren't motivating you, if you're not all trying to be the best version of yourself, you need a new friend group, or you need to understand, because I have friends from high school and college who aren't really go-getters. They're good people. I love them. I'll take a bullet for them, but they're in this category.
And it's okay to be.
You have to know that they're there. You can't change them, and you never will.
And it's okay to be alone in the transition period from I have these friends, but they're not right for me, to finding those new friends.
You need to, it might sound counterintuitive, but it's not. You need to experience pain and suffering individually on your own and not mask it with pornography and shit dating and alcohol, which is crap. I don't care. All this health stuff. Oh, drinking wine is healthy. No, it's not. It's bullshit. You need to suffer in that way in order so that you get used to that, because people try not to. They want to feel comfortable all the time. You have to be able to deal with that, because guess what? No one else is coming to save you. Women aren't going to come save you. They don't want the men that need saving. And you need to go through that and develop yourself so that when black swan events, by black swan for people who don't know, unpredictable, crazy events that happen. COVID's an example of one. The '08 crash is one. Plagues, epidemics, potential EMPs.
It could be a personal black swan event. Someone in your family dies.
Someone in your family, or loss of a job, career, a pivot. You need to be able to handle the kind of stress and internal pain and shit that can happen there. Like Teflon Don. Like for example, people can have whatever views they want on the president, on Donald Trump, but he's resilient as shit. His mentality is amazing. And we can talk about as to why that's the case. You don't have to like him. You don't have to agree with his politics. I don't agree with everything he does. But he's resilient. He's battle-tested. And challenge yourself. And so the way that men do it is not by therapy, and people are going to get nuts with me. Nuts. They're going to get nuts about this. I have a degree in psychology too. But I'm going to tell you, men, it's not saying there's not a point for it that I can't help. You have to grow with challenges and test yourself as a man, and that's what builds the resilience. And so if you stop wasting your time stop trying to impress the women that aren't naturally interested in you, that you feel like you're wasting your energy, and stop being around toxic people who don't have drive. There's a bunch out there you can find, and they find you when you put it out there. And that's my advice, because that stuff eats your soul, and that's what depletes your emotional bank account, and then that depletes your physical bank account.
That's so interesting. And we talk about it, obviously, but for the podcast purposes and the audience, you come back to mentality at the end of the thing. We have this whole conversation about health. Mm-hmm. And reality is it comes back to mentality and how you think not only about the world but about yourself and the internal drive that you might have. Sure. And it's likely that Trump is only here and still alive because of his mentality.
There's no question about
and people that I saw in my grandpa, for example, just resilient as shit, super persistent, wouldn't take no for an answer. People call him stubborn. You know, maybe he was just strong in his convictions. You know, that's what my dad says. But he wouldn't quit. You know, he could have quit a couple heart attacks ago. He ended up passing away, but he dealt with the health stuff for years and years and years because his mentality was just like, I'm going to survive. I'm alive. I'm here. I'm just going to keep going. And I find that interesting as someone that's in the medical field, that you go back to mentality almost as the baseline for young men to focus on over everything else. And very few people that are in the health space, holistic, this and that, jump in the cold plunge, bro. They're not talking about the reality of the situation, which is your mind at the end of the day is number one.
I have a lot to say about that. First off, and your grandfather, that's a great example, that you living and going through those things and dealing with, honor God by surviving and winning. There's a Billy Joel line in the song, I found that just surviving was a noble fight. Honor God and your life, your chance to be here and win and survive. And don't just keep going. And that mentality, that's why, you know, at the base of it, that's why Teflon Don or motivational, they understand that it's they have to honor that gift. And I want to talk about the cold plunge thing. The cold plunge, obviously there's health benefits for people. There's no question about that. We don't even need to talk about the benefits. The thing as to why the reason why people are getting benefits of, they're doing something difficult and often early in the morning. And so they're training themselves to handle that resilience so that everything else they deal with the rest of the day is not as severe. It's called a hormetic response. You get a little bit of poison, a little bit of stress, and your body adapts, and then it's resistant to disease and other things. I want to also go back to something I wanted to touch upon with, you know, I joked about, you know, the ages in 25 to 35. This generation, I'm a millennial and I'm around Gen Z all the time. They have to adapt fast. People think that if they go to law school or they're accountants or they're doctors, they're going to be so many not employed in 10 years because of AI and what's happening that no one knows, and we're not going to stop it. I wish we did. I wish we collectively as a society stopped or minimized it, but it's not going to happen. You have to adapt, and the answer isn't to fall and crumble into depression about it. Pivot. If you're a young guy, find ways, whether it's trading or other businesses, things you're passionate about, online businesses, stuff you're doing and helping people like that, because your stuff is different. I've seen a lot of crap out there. Your stuff is different. And I'm not just saying that, by the way. There are a lot of not so good people out there.
No, that's true.
Right?
I'll admit it.
Find ways of doing that. Find ways to make money doing that, and get strong mentally and physically, because if you're harder to kill and your mind is harder to kill, you're going to win. And if you slow down and realize all the chaos around you, everything's going crazy and expediting, you can handle the storm.
The more comfort I had, the worse my life got. The worse my life got, the more comfort I had. Mm-hmm. And the more discomfort I have, the happier I am, the more fulfilled I am. And so I thought I was chasing comfort. I moved to Miami. I was making 50 G's a month. Mm-hmm. I'm 22 years old. Mm-hmm. And I'm comfort, drinking, learning about life and, kind of like growing up a little bit. And it's comfortable, and I'm just chilling, and I'm doing some work, but I'm chilling most of the time, and yada, yada. And then you get hit with a hard moment, and you're not seasoned to recover from it. And that was my wake-up call in my early 20s. I'm glad I had my early 20s instead of in my 30s. And I jumped back into discomfort mode, which was the first thing that got me there. Yep. I went from 0 to 100K a month in sales. Mm-hmm. Through discomfort, through sitting alone in the office I built in my parents' basement, basically no sunlight, just blue light all day, working out. I built a little gym there too.
Blue light makes you rich.
and just pushing as hard as I could. And then I got lazy, and I get there, and it's 50 G's profit, and it's, oh yeah, I'm just going to chill. I'm going to go to the club, blah, 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 whatever. And when I went back to discomfort, everything that I want started to come back to reality and the direction I had and the fulfillment, because I stopped making progress during the comfort.
Sure.
And
it's easy to.
I was less resilient to bad things happening because of the comfort.
And you were winning statistically far and above multiple standard deviations above the normal person, especially for your age. And that's really hard for you to catch that assessment, because you could have just rode off into the sunset and done stupid.
I almost think that life works in like a spiral, if that makes sense, where, and I forgot the name, it's a Fibonacci sequence, right, where it works in spirals. Mm-hmm. But those spirals get bigger and bigger and bigger. Correct. And it's almost like fractals. It's going up and up and up and up. Fractals. And we can talk about fractals in the health stuff too. It's a little advanced. Yeah. But it's like you start and you don't really feel them, but then you get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the ups and downs and the highs and the lows increase as the spirals go. But the spiral, the low point that I had because of some personal stuff and some business splits, and because of too much comfort, right? It went low, but not as low as where I started. And now it's back on the way back up, sure. And it's another spiral, another spiral, another spiral, and I almost think you can mitigate the downside of it as well if you do the things that you just talked about.
Absolutely. And to bring it back to the whole Gen Z thing, millennial thing, even some Gen X, it's like there's research even showing that, and it's apparent if you look at some people who are in their early 20s. I'm just being honest. I'm not being mean, and I'm not saying people are unattractive, but Gen Z is aging faster physically than other generations.
Are they? I feel like some of them look younger.
I feel like the guys look younger, except for some. Some guys look but men in general are like, there's more men morons and there's more men geniuses than and when you compare populations, like women, it's like there are more men geniuses than women geniuses, right?
Yeah. And there's more polarity in the male population.
More polarity, right? So some Gen Z guys look really old. Like there's some funny videos about there online. And then, but a lot of the young guys, they look like kids. They look like really young, 18-year-old, 20-year-old guys. And I'm like, you guys look different than we did, like flat out. And I'm not that much older. I joke, I'm 35. But the girls who are like 20, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, a lot of them look like 5 so years older than they are. And I've seen that with clients I work on too, like some of them just, it's the toxic environment. And so to go back to your talk about, things spiral, if you don't get aggressive about taking and managing your health now, if you have hormonal issues and you don't deal with it and you just get on birth control, that's only going to spiral and get worse. And anybody who knows this, it's only going to get worse. All right. If you're just on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication and stuff, if you don't deal with what's behind that, whether it's a catecholamine balance because of your gut or a trauma or emotional stuff, if you don't deal with that, it only gets worse. So the thing is, even though you might be younger and you feel like you have more time, now's the time to be aggressive in this world. You got to get ahead of stuff now.
Guys, I don't want to stop us because we're having a great discussion. And maybe we'll do a part 2 of this at a later date. But we are running out of camera percentage here and battery and life. And so we're going to have to cut it, right? Because I don't want the video to cut off. So, Paul, I'm curious. Any final words? Keep them as brief as possible. I think this is a great discussion. This is good for my audience to see. And guys, I enjoy doing these podcasts. This is more of kind of like a spur of the moment. Like I'm going to do it on this new channel as I can. But I might do them more often if you guys like them. So drop it in the comments below. Okay. You can find Paul's link below. But Paul, is there anything you want to add at the end here as a final moment, final key point?
Things are going to get very interesting in the next few years to come. Prepare, hedge for disease, and get ahead of your processes. Electric medicine is the future. There's no question about it. My work and other people who do stuff similar are going to completely destroy and revolutionize modern medicine as we know it. And that's it. And this was a lot of fun. So.
And I hope to be part of it as well. That's why we're having this discussion.
You will.
We're going to blow them up. See you guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
What do you think?
It was fun. It was fun. What do you think?
I thought it was great.